Welcome to the CL Brown Show. I am your host, CL Brown, columnist with the Louisville Courier-Journal, and it is that time of year. Football is about to crank up. I am here on location in Charlotte at the ACC Kickoff Media Days event. Over the next 3 days, I'll be talking to a lot of coaches and players and administrators in college football. But for this episode today, we're going to have Cal head coach Justin Wilcox join me. Erik, the CEO of the Fiesta Bowl, will join in, as well as the Athletics senior writer on college football, David Ubben. So I'm going to skip out on doing a CL Sounds Off this week, and we're going to jump right into the interviews. And welcoming to the show, I have with me the head coach of California, Coach Wilcox. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
I wanted to jump in with some of the things Commissioner Jim Phillips spoke about earlier today in terms of the debate, or at least the talk about looking at 9 games in conference versus 8 games. You're coming from the Pac-12, previously in the Pac-12, where you guys did play 9 games. What do you think? How do you like the difference between having that one extra non-conference game to play, or
Yeah, I understand the debate on it, and I think what's key is getting something standard. So all the conferences are kind of essentially playing by the same rules there. I mean, it's you're trying to figure out who the best teams are. Keeping the competition level as consistent as possible, because with all the conferences who are all trying to find their way into the playoff, I think it's important that there's some uniformity in the scheduling.
Yeah. Folding that into the talk with the college football playoff. Right now, 12 teams. Let's talk about expanding to 16. Where do you kind of sit in what's the right number for this?
I think bigger's better. That seems to be inevitable. Now, who gets in? Automatic bids. I think I understand, everybody's going to fight for their own self-interest. The schools are, which they should, and so are the conferences. And I think that as long as, there's a big number of teams vying for a limited number of spots, you're not going to have a perfect system. Like it's never going to be perfect. I think everybody's trying to figure out what's best. I do think, adding teams is important. But once you get into how many qualifiers from this conference or that conference, there's not going to be an agreement, unanimous agreement on that, because everybody's got to fight for their own self-interest, which I respect.
Now, when we talk about people's opinions on best conferences and best teams and how that weighs into when it comes down to the committee to join, I feel like the ACC has probably been overshadowed a bit in football by the SEC, by the Big Ten. It seems like they kind of wield the bigger sword when the decisions start being made because of whether their history or just their position right now in terms of their broadcast deals and all that kind of stuff. But that being said, what can the ACC do? How does the ACC kind of have a bigger stature on a national stage? Is it just a matter of when it comes down to the non-conference games, the bowl games, you got to win those games?
Yeah, I think is it just performance? Yeah, performance against those teams. The only way to truly know who's better, from conferences or teams, is you play each other. That's the only way to know. That's what the games are for. And so it's the opportunities to play some crossover games in non-conference play, and then playing well. That's the key.
Yeah. Now, one more big picture kind of question. I was just wondering, so we're at a point where we've never been before. The House settlement was finalized. Now there's a revenue sharing plan in place with the athletes in college. The NIL has already been introduced. With the huge amounts of money, doesn't even have to be huge, but now that it's legal and everything, just the money that athletes are able to make now, what impact, how has your locker room been any different because of those things, and individual players maybe making more than other, their teammates and that kind of dynamic. How have you seen that play out in your locker room?
Yeah, educating them. I would say I don't know that there's any locker room that's going to have zero issue with that. I mean, they're young people, and there's significant sums of money. We're not talking about $10 or $20 difference. We're talking about significant differences, and they're still young people. And once they get to the professional level, there's always comparisons going on, and comparisons happen on your own team and with players on other teams. And I don't know that that's avoidable. I think it's keeping the focus on what you can control. And if you want your situation to improve, here's how you can improve it. But I don't know that you're going to completely remove any comparison in a given locker room or to other teams. And so I think it's just educating them on it, talking about, pro sports, pro football, how that works. And is it always, I guess in sports, whether it's coaches or players, the only way to truly, get the value right is to pay after the season, based on what was done. I mean, it's never going to be perfect. I don't know that there's anybody that's ever been paid the exact amount, correct amount. It's either they're underpaid or overpaid, one or the other. So I think that's just the way that sports work. I think it's kind of educating them on it, keeping the focus on things that they can do, and not to try and, there's a saying that comparison's the thief of joy. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. And so what do you value? Is it only money? If money's the only thing you value, well, football is very difficult. And football takes a lot of time and energy. And if you're only focused on money, then I think, you could have some struggles. And whether that's football or any other endeavor in life. But I think just kind of talking about it and understanding that it's never going to be an environment where nobody has an issue.
I want to talk a little bit more specifically about Cal now. Your first year in the ACC last year, going through the leagues. Was travel ever, I know going into it, people were talking about, well, these West Coast teams, how that's going to work. Was travel ever a factor in anything for you guys?
Never an excuse for us. The trips, there's some long trips. I mean, that's the reality of it. But we left on Thursdays. We got a huge Delta plane. They had all these big lie-down suites. There was, big, comfy first-class chairs. For the players, traveled in style. We made sure to take care of the players. They ate well. They traveled well. We were there a day early. We got to spend time together, so we really tried to turn it into a positive where we spent all of Thursday, all of Friday, Saturday together as a team. And in this environment, that's another opportunity for guys to get connected. So, it was not an excuse for us. There were some games that we felt like we just didn't play well enough in a given play or moment in order to win them. And we had opportunities to do that, and we didn't come through. So we got to do a better job of that. But we didn't feel like travel was an obstacle for us at all.
Yeah. Now, I don't have a schedule in front of me. You guys come to Louisville this year,
we do.
Right? That's okay.
Yep.
Okay.
One of our trips.
What's your general impression of Coach Braum and his program?
Yeah, I have a ton of respect for Coach Braum. Always have. He's an excellent football coach. Teams always play very tough. The quarterback's seems to always play well wherever he's been. The quarterback play is going to be at a high level. Done a great job recruiting, and got a lot of respect for the program and the team, and we'll be looking forward to that competition.
Yeah. What do you feel like the identity of your team is going to be this year?
Yeah, we aim to be a smart and tough team. Guys that make decisions in the best interest of the team. Guys that exhibit physical, mental, emotional toughness. We feel like we have some very good players. There's going to be a lot of new faces on our team. We have a lot of turnover on defense, a lot of graduates, a number of draft picks. Offense, we have a number of new players, and we got to play better in situational football. I mean, that was the difference last year. It was probably 4 plays from being a 10-win team, and it all comes down to situational football. So smart, tough guys that play big in big moments. That's what we're looking for.
Indeed. Coach, I appreciate you joining me today. Good luck to you on the season. Now I'd like to welcome to the show the CEO of the Fiesta Bowl, Mr. Erik Moses. Erik, thank you for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
Now, just let me go ahead and get this out of the way. Erik is my fraternity brother. He pledged me. He is what we call my special. So it is kind of funny that 30 years ago we never thought we'd be sitting here like this.
No, I certainly didn't. Yeah.
But that being said, that to the side, I want to jump in with you on the college football playoff. The Fiesta Bowl is obviously a part of that, and there's been talk of expansion. So just for the listeners out there, how would expanding the college football playoff to 16 teams, how would it affect bowl games? I know you guys are locked in, but would there be additional bowls to come in to host possibly?
It's an interesting question. I mean, the discussion now is between whether we move from 12 to 14 or even 16 teams. And anybody who follows the NCAA tournament understands that has continued. That field has grown a lot over the last 20 years. And so, there's an argument to be made for more access, for more schools to be able to participate, more fan bases to participate, et cetera. But football's a little bit different than basketball and some of the other sports. I mean, the wear and tear on the body means that you can't play but so many games in a season, right? And so I think all of those factors are things that are being considered by the management committee and the CFP. It's possible that if we added 2 or 4 more teams, that you could potentially have those first round games be played at bowl games. I don't think that that's likely to happen. The first round games on campuses last year were so popular, so well attended, had so much energy, and were just so, I think, so much a show and a demonstration of the passion around college football that nobody wants to get rid of that. We want to capture that. I mean, the crowds and the energy were like some of the biggest rivalry games that you would see during regular season. I got a chance to attend the SMU Penn State game in Happy Valley because the winner of that game came to the Fiesta Bowl last year, and 106,000 people in the stadium. 20 degrees outside tells you everything you need to know about the passion around that, and having that on the campuses.
How much of that would you say, though, is it was the first year? It's something new. People had never experienced that before, so maybe it added to the excitement level.
I think there's some of that, but frankly, I would think you'd see that played out more in the television ratings than you would in the attendance. I mean, it was 20 degrees, and so I have to buy the tickets, get there, and unless you live in that area, I mean, you have people like us traveling from Arizona.
It's not exactly easy to get.
It's not easy to, right. You fly to Philly and then take a puddle jumper from Philly into State College, and so I think it's an expression of the passion around college football, and I think that will continue no matter how many teams you have in the first round. Now, representing 2 bowl games, the Verbal Fiesta Bowl and the Rate Bowl, I was a believer a couple of years ago when they first started talking about expansion from 4 teams to a larger field, that we should include some of the other bowls as hosts for those first round games or those additional games. And it made sense in my mind. You have mostly larger market, cities and destinations. But then 2 years ago, we hosted in the Verbal Fiesta Bowl, Oregon and Liberty. And Liberty had a great year that year. I think they may have been either undefeated or only lost 1 game that year, having recently moved up from the FCS division up to FBS. And Oregon was 6 or 7 points away from playing in the college football playoff, were it not for Michael Penix and the University of Washington beating them twice. And truth be told, we struggled to move as many tickets as we are accustomed to moving for the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. But had that game been a first round game and played at Autzen Stadium at Oregon, it would have been a sellout. Yeah. And it would have delivered all those things that we look for in college football, the energy, the passion, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm a believer now in first round games being on campuses. But I do think thereafter, as we start to winnow the field, moving those to bowl games like the Verbo Fiesta Bowl, the Peach Bowl, Rose Bowl, Cotton, Sugar, and Orange, that are in major cities, major infrastructure, direct flights, the hotel inventory you need, all of the things that you would expect for premier sports property, which is what the college football playoff is. You need those things in order to move people from all around the country to take part in that.
Just to play devil's advocate with that, though. So what we've seen since the portal window is really at the close of season and right before bowl games, we've seen a bunch of teams who had great seasons, but the team that they filled in the bowl does not resemble what they had during the year. Do you think an expanded playoff would help the bowls in that sense? Because you're adding more teams to the mix, and you're giving players a reason to stay put and still play.
Theoretically, right? I don't think that we saw a lot of attrition for the playoff teams last year. There were some. Penn State's backup quarterback ended up leaving. I know Arizona State had some guys that were in the portal, and I think many of them stayed and maybe even played in Arizona State's game at the Peach Bowl last year. The portal issue is its own issue. I mean, no other sport has free agency during its playoffs, and so that needs to be fixed. And I don't want to limit what kids can do in terms of the way that they move around. I think there need to be some guardrails around it so we have some consistency for the sport, because everybody likes the good parts of expansion, the transfer portal, and NIL, but nobody wants the negative parts of that. And the negative parts might be seen soon if the enterprise itself starts to suffer because people can't follow what guys are on what teams because they move so much. If the sponsors and fans start watching less because it doesn't feel as familiar anymore. When we were at North Carolina, we knew everybody who was on the basketball team and probably most of the guys on the football team because they were going to be there for 2+ years every year. Now guys move around so much, it's hard to really invest emotionally in following them. And I think if you take that to its natural extension and you have guys like, and I don't mean to disparage him, but Dylan Gabriel, who played at 3 or 4 teams in college, is that guy really, is he really part of the group that I consider myself part of? I think you have those kinds of concerns. So, they got to fix the transfer portal and make certain that that's not happening at the most critical time when we are showing off what makes this sport great and what makes it different from the NFL and every other sport. We need our best players and the best talent in the teams that they've been playing in for the entire season when it's time for playoffs.
Yeah. So as the head of one of the New Year's Six Bowls, how much do you guys inject yourself into the conversation of just like football expansion, playoff expansion and that kind of thing? Or are you just kind of on the periphery and wait to see how it falls?
Look, I mean, those major decisions are being made by the management committee and the college football playoff, and then to some extent the presidents of the universities that are involved in these conferences. We are a stakeholder, and we are in constant communication with the college football playoff system. We come to events like this, so we have time with commissioners like Jim Phillips and others to make clear our viewpoints and perspectives on that. Not so much lobbying, but because we're on the ground and helping to execute these games, which the college football enterprise relies on, we have a perspective that I think is unique and that should be shared. And so all of us, I mean, most of my colleagues are here, are doing the same thing. We're trying to be part of the conversation. We know we're not driving the conversation, but we want to be part of the conversation.
Well, you always have a conversation here. Thank you again for joining me.
Absolutely.
And now joining the show, I have with me from The Athletic, David Ubben. David is a senior writer with The Athletic covering college football, also doing the podcast. Mm-hmm. I forgot the name of the podcast.
Bunch Formation with myself and Chris Vanini.
Yes.
Check us out. We're gonna. I think even 10 years down the line, we're still gonna call ourselves the newest college football podcast. So I think we're gonna stick with that. So it's been a lot of fun.
Hey, whatever works, right?
Exactly.
Stick to it.
Exactly.
Newest college football podcast. Well, I wanted to ask you about Louisville specifically. Obviously, they'll be breaking in another new quarterback, Miller Moss this time, the USC transfer. They lost a lot on defense. That's probably the biggest question mark this year. But how do you see Louisville shaping up in this conference race?
I mean, I just think the quarterback spot is so important. And Jeff Brohm has such an established track record of doing well with different arms. And with Miller Moss, I feel like he was better at USC than maybe he got credit for. But ultimately, you have a guy that has a lot of talent, and I would say as much or more than Jeff Brohm has even dealt with in the past. Maybe like Aiden O'Connell and Tyler Shuck and some of these other guys. And that's not I think he's just as talented, if not more so, than these guys. So I think that upside is there. Certainly a lot of questions around Louisville, but I like them offensively to be able to make some noise and really be a team that is, first of all, fun to watch, but is going to win some ball games.
Yeah. So I wrote a column that Clemson is going to win the conference, and everybody else is
Probably
fighting
about
for
right.
second
We might
place.
be getting a Clemson revenge tour this year. That's kind of my feel. Is like the last couple years, 3 years, it's been a little ugly.
Yeah.
You know, now the defense is going to be there. I smell a Clemson revenge tour, but yeah.
Well, do you think if my column is right, if you are right, and everybody's fighting for second place, can Louisville be the second place team?
They can. I mean, some of that might be up to we'll see what Miami is. We'll see, what SMU has for an encore. The potential is there. I think it's the point where I don't know that I'd pick it, but if you told me it happened, I wouldn't be like, well, how'd that happen? I can see it for sure. So I think there's a lot of competition. I mean, I think Clemson is probably head and shoulders above all those other teams, and if they don't win, it's going to be a lot of Clemson-induced problems. But I definitely think it's possible. I can see it.
Yeah. Well, Louisville does have, I don't know if it's the advantage, but Clemson has to come to Louisville this year.
Mm-hmm.
They obviously went down to Death Valley and gave them their only loss last year in conference. And it was their first win ever in the series. Only 8 games, but 9 games total. But yeah, still got their first win in it. But how do you see Louisville under Braum just in the larger ACC picture? I mean, is this a program that you expect now to consistently be in that mix, to be in that tier of teams?
I think they can be. I think in really good years you can be. But I think what Braum can bring to Louisville is you raise that floor. That this thing's always going to be cyclical. Even in the portal era, you're not going to have strong rosters every single year at every program. There's going to be some cycling. Those cycles are faster, more unpredictable in the portal era. But it's hard for me to look at Louisville and say, they're going to be – the bottom's going to fall out. They're going to go 4-8. I think that, even in a down year, 6-7 wins seems like it might be the floor for them. And then when you have a peak year, when everything comes together, you stay healthy. We've got a lot of experience. 9, 10, 11 wins, getting to Charlotte, getting to play for the ACC Championship is really reasonable, I think, for the program.
Yeah. So let's talk about the bigger picture, too, with the college football playoff expansion. Still in discussion, not necessarily going to move to 16, but
it feels like there's momentum for 12, but we'll see.
Where is the sticking point really just the format with the SEC and the Big Ten wanting to have those 4 automatic qualifiers for each?
Pretty
of those
much.
conferences?
I mean, basically, so with the MOU that they signed, basically the Big Ten and the SEC both have the ability to veto any changes. So the Big Ten is generally on an island for wanting these automatic qualifiers, wanting this sort of championship weekend this sort of shift into these qualifying games. It's very unpopular. People don't love it. The 5-11, where you have the 5 conference champions and the selection committee picks 11 other teams, that's generally where I think the fans are and all 10 other conferences are. The Big Ten wants these automatic qualifiers. So ultimately, I think the Big Ten might go to 5-11 if the SEC decided we're going to play 9 conference games. SEC doesn't really want to play non-conference games right now. I think the ADs and the commissioner would love it. They've supported it. Coaches don't really want it. Obviously, it's going to make their jobs harder, all of that stuff. So we're kind of at an impasse where somebody is going to have to blink, and if not, then we're headed for the status quo of 12 teams straight seeding for at least another year. We'll see. The deadline, December 1st. How real that deadline is or isn't, I don't know. I still think there's too much money here to say goodbye to 16. Yeah. But if you can't agree, and if neither side is going to compromise, then you have no choice but to stick with the status quo, which is sort of unthinkable a few months ago. But then when the SEC got together and realized, we actually are a 5-11 conference, then that changes things.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing we've learned. These college administrators don't leave money on the table.
I've always said if it makes sense with a C, it makes sense with an S, and I've thought that every realignment decision in the last 20 years, everything the conferences do that don't make sense on paper, that don't enhance the experience for the fans, I mean, these are money-based decisions, and I think they get backed into corners where it's like, well, we feel like we have to, and that's where you come into nobody's in charge of the sport, and it's as a fan of college football, I grew up loving this sport, and it is my favorite sport. It's sad regionally what it's become, and it's losing that. I mean, the fact that we don't have a major conference with a Western Conference, with a Western Coast identity is really sad to me, but it is what it is, and I still think as annoying as all that stuff is, and the transient rosters, and until we get that fixed and all those things, I mean, fall Saturdays are still fall Saturdays, and like as annoying as all that other stuff is, you wake up and game day finishes. Like that feeling is still the same, and I think that in the places that really care about college football, that hasn't changed, and I think they're banking on that, and hopefully it doesn't. We'll see where the sport goes.
Yeah. Do you have any sleeper picks for the ACC race this year?
I mean, I could see Clemson beating a lot of teams unconscious, so those would be all my sleeper picks probably. No, I mean, nobody trusts Miami, so that doesn't really. I don't know that necessarily counts as a sleeper pick, but I just think, man, just the pieces are there for Clemson. So I don't know. I think Louisville actually might be a team that I feel like could make some noise, but man. If Clemson doesn't get it done this year, I will be shocked because all the pieces are there for them to really be a team that's like, no, like we are on par with anybody else in the sport right now, which they haven't been able to say, in 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah. Do you think SMU getting into the college football playoff last year, does that set a precedent for the ACC that 2 teams will be the standard for the playoff? Or
I think it's all contextual, man. These are. So the ACC and the Big 12 have supported this 5-11, not because they feel like it helps them on the field, but perception is reality. If you just give the Big 10 and the SEC 4 bids and you're taking 2, then you are second-class status. At least now, you can have a peak year where maybe you get 3 in. And if you look at a 10, 15, 20-year period, maybe you don't get 2 teams in every year, but you're not just readily accepting, hey, we are not on the same level as the Big Ten and the SEC, even though financially, obviously that's true. So, every year it's just contextual. It's hard to say. I mean, last year, obviously, SMU losing allowed the ACC to have 2 teams. I mean, if they win that game, it's only a 1-bid league. So, I would say probably not set a precedent. And there's so much context and so much stuff that has to go into, what happened in the other leagues? Who are these other candidates? The fact that you have this trio of SEC teams that all have 3 losses, that's a factor. That might not be always the case. So I wouldn't say it set a precedent last year, but I think, those teams, acquitted themselves relatively well. I mean, going to Happy Valley is tough. Clemson put a pretty big scare into a really good Texas team. So, it's hard to say, but I feel like the ACC did pretty well in the playoff last year.
Indeed. Well, we will let you go. I appreciate you joining me. This is David Ubben. Check out the Bunch Formation podcast. Check out his work at The Athletic. That concludes another edition of the CL Brown Show. Stay tuned. Next week, we're going to have round 2 from ACC Media Day, and I'll be joined by University of Louisville coach Jeff Brohm, as well as select players from the team. Please click on those follow buttons to subscribe to the podcast. Please leave a 5-star review because we need more love in this world. And if you don't want to do any of that, that's cool. Sit back, relax. Catch me next week, next Wednesday when a new podcast drops, or you can always catch me at Courier-Journal.com to read my columns. Thanks again for tuning in.